Hello and welcome to episode 29 of The Witcher chapter by chapter book review, where I'll go through a summary of what happened in the latest chapter and give my detailed thoughts on it. Today I'm discussing chapter 1 from Baptism of Fire. I'm always so excited when we start a new book, and I know that, I can safely say I'm always excited because this is the 5th book that we have moved on to in this series. That's wild. I started this back in November, either end of November or beginning of December of the previous year. I say that just in case you're listening far into the future. It's June at the time of this recording. So, that's not that much time, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it is, and I'm just getting older and time is flying by. And what is that, 6 months, 7 months? That doesn't seem like a very long time to me at all. Let's not go further into that time and getting older. No, not touching that. But I'm very excited to move on to Baptism of Fire. Getting a little bit nervous that the whole thing is going to go by fast because I don't want this to end. If you are listening to these podcast episodes back to back, as they come out, then you'll know that I took off the week prior. So I skipped a week for the first time since I started. And I think I'm going to actually do that in between every book. I really wanted to do it this past time. I won't get too detailed on that. But I really wanted to do it because I just needed to take a break and get more caught up. And I just needed to take a week off. But I think I'm just going to continue to do that in between the rest of the book. So in between this book and Tower of Swallows, and in between that and Lady of the Lake. And then I'm going to wrap up the series with Season of Storms. So I think that will be a good thing to do so that I can push this whole series out longer. I can I don't want to use the word drag it out, because I feel like that sounds like it's mundane or boring. But no, I want it to last as long as I can get it to last, because I'm really enjoying this and I don't want it to come to an end. And just thinking about how fast that this has gone since I started until now it's just making me realize that this whole thing's going to come to an end very quickly. I did map it out. It's if I take those breaks in between each book, it should be done by about February or March of 2023. But I could also break some other chapters up into 2 parts. So when one episode I'll do part 1, the next episode I'll do part 2. So it'll be 2 episodes covering 1 chapter. I've done that already with a chapter from Blood of Elves. Never did it in Time of Contempt. I actually considered doing it for this chapter because there are a lot of things that happen in this chapter. The past couple of chapters, in those episodes that I cover them, I said that they went by really fast, and they did. They were quick episodes, both under 25 minutes. That's a quick episode. So that's not going to be the case with this one, because there's a lot to discuss. And because there's a lot to discuss, I'm going to get into it now instead of continuing my rambling. All right, so I'll kick that off with the recap of the last chapter so that you are caught up. And then we'll go into the summary, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so last episode recap. After getting caught by a gang known as Trappers, Ciri is held prisoner while the gang travels to take her to the local prefect in a Nilfgaardian province and collect the reward for her. When they stop at an inn, they come across another gang who captured a boy, Kaylee, who's part of a group of young criminals called the Rats. The rest of the Rats rescue Kaylee from the inn and bring Ciri along with them, who sticks around and becomes a part of the group herself. All right, here is chapter 1, summary. We start out Baptism of Fire with Milva, a non-dryad archer who lives in Brokilon Forest, recalling her first meetings with Geralt. Shortly after his arrival, Milva was summoned by one of the healers to ask if she would find out news for him while she goes out into the world. At first, Milva is enraged by this request, but agrees after being personally requested by Eithne, the Lady of Brokilon. Milva ventures out into the world to retrieve news for the Witcher and to go about her usual mission of finding and then escorting weakened Scoia'tael commandos into Brokilon. After she updates Geralt on the news of Ciri and Nilfgaard, he decides he must set off to rescue her. Shortly after, she receives news from some of the Scoia'tael that Nilfgaard is moving into Sodden and Brugge, so she rushes off to alert Geralt of the turmoil that's begun in the direction he's heading. Meanwhile, Dijkstra has received news about Milva spying for Geralt, but decides not to take action against either of them for the time being. He also meets with one of Emir's emissaries, where they both request that the other hand over criminals of their own countries, but they both also deny having knowledge of the criminals' whereabouts. Meanwhile, again, Philippa Eilhart arranged a meeting in Monte Calvo Castle between herself and 7 other sorceresses, most of which we've met, a couple of which we have not. Her plan is to form a secret apolitical convent, or lodge, of mages that strictly consists of women. Meanwhile, Ciri seems to have adapted to the lifestyle of a rat. She and the rest of the gang parade themselves through a village where they receive much admiration and respect from most of the villagers. Well, there you have chapter 1. And I'm going to kick off talking about it from the start, like I typically like to do. And I want to start off talking about Milva. So I want to explain what we know about her so far because she's a brand new character. There was one very, very brief mention of her in chapter 5 of Time of Contempt, but no elaboration whatsoever. So now that we've got more details, I want to go over that. And I'm sorry if this is a little bit spoilery. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm not going to unveil too much, but I want to get this over. I want to explain what we know about her because she does return again. This is not the last time we're going to see her, hear from her. I'm not going to say how long she's in the story or anything else about her involvement past this chapter, but I just figured I would throw that in there so that you understand why I'm talking about her as much as I am. Because I've got a handful of notes here on Milva. So, unlike the Dryads of Brokilon, she was not born there. She was born to a human family. She was kind of like adopted. Sort of how they were going to take Ciri in the Sword of Destiny short story, if you remember that. The Dryads were going to basically make her one of them. Except I don't know if they performed a ritual and gave Milva the water of Brokilon like they were going to do with Ciri. It's not explained. And something else that I'm not totally sure about, but it seems like this is the case, is that I think she's the only one that is allowed to come and go as she pleases. I don't think the Dryads are able to do that. And I think that's the reason that she's sent on the mission to find out news for Geralt, because none of the other ones leave. I think they all have their jobs there and they all stay in Brokilon. But she ends up there originally because they caught her in a trap after she wandered into the forest, but they spared her life. And now, because they spared her life, she's indebted to Eithne. And her name before she was captured by them, or I shouldn't say captured, but before she became kind of one of them, was Maria Baring. Geralt actually calls her that at one point. And her name now, Milva, in the Elder Speech, means red kite. So Milva was originally used to gather humans, round them up, and provoke them to attack the forest. And eventually, they caught on that she was actually doing that on purpose, that she was assisting the Dryads in leading these humans into a trap. So after she got busted doing that, after she got busted doing exactly what she was doing, they did not have her continue with that mission anymore. So now she escorts Scoia'tael commandos into Brokilon for refuge after getting defeated fighting humans. Although she does seem to get along with the elves. She seems like they respect her, she seems like she respects them, they respect her. I don't think that she is totally in support of their cause, because I think she seems to understand that they are being incited and used by Nilfgaard, which is the case. And I know that they don't think that they're doing it for Nilfgaard. I think that they're doing it, or they think that they're doing it for, their own reasons, their own cause, something that is meaningful to them as an elven race. But Nilfgaard is the ones that are getting them to do that for Nilfgaard's best interest. And Milva seems to understand that that's what's going on. And there's at one point in this chapter, she tries to convince this commando that's about to go back out and fight not to do it. But they're not going to listen to her, of course. So Milva is a very exceptional hunter, and she comes from a long line of hunters. She's got this bow that she's very proud of. It was really expensive, and it's supposed to be extremely proficient. Don't really know that much about bows or weapons, so I'm not going to try to explain too much. That they did explain a little bit about what makes this bow so great, but I didn't even bother writing in the notes because I feel like I was just going to embarrass myself trying to talk about it. But she's got a really great bow and she really knows how to use it. So she is a very exceptional archer. Well, now that we know pretty much all there is to know about Milva at this point, I want to go in and talk about her involvement in this story. So at first, when she's asked to go out and retrieve tidings from the world for Geralt, she's angry about this. She doesn't want to do it. Eithne needs to personally request her to do so before she agrees. And she has to do it at that point because she's indebted to Eithne, and she goes out and she gathers this news, and then she comes back and she delivers the news to Geralt, but she's actually very brusque with him at first. Like she doesn't want him to think that she's okay with it. She wants him to see how upset she is about this. But then after she sees his reaction to the news, she lightens up a little bit and she starts to sympathize. And I think that she realizes that he isn't who she thought he is. At first, she thought that he was one of the rebels from Thanedd because the news about Thanedd has completely gotten out. Everybody knows what happened there, or has a general idea of what happened there. But she thinks that he was just this bad guy that was a rebel, and he came there, and I don't think she even thought that it made sense for him to be there at all. But she wasn't going to care about that. But now that she's being basically forced to get involved, she was not happy. But I think she starts to see who he really is, because she obviously had the wrong impression on Geralt at first. So the first bit of news that she gives Geralt is on Codringer's death. Next, she heard that there is an order for Geralt and Ciri to both be captured alive. They aren't going to find Ciri because she vanished without a trace. We know where she is, we kind of know where she is. We know what she's doing, but nobody in an official position knows where Ciri is at this time. So Milva leaves Brokilon again, and then she comes back with the news that Ciri is in Nilfgaard and possibly betrothed to Emir. So this is actually when Geralt initially makes the decision to attempt to rescue Ciri. I don't know exactly how much time went by after he finds this out from Milva, and then Dandelion shows up into the forest, because some of this is being written not in the order of which everything took place, because a lot of what we see in this chapter is a flashback. So Milva's thinking back to when she met Geralt and the events that took place between her and Geralt afterward. All right, let's move on and talk about Dijkstra now. So one little thing that I wanted to make sure I said about Dijkstra was his leg's doing better, in case you were wondering, after Geralt really messed it up in the chapter 4 when they were on Thanedd. His leg is doing better. Apparently he was being carried around in a big chair for a little bit of time, but he did have to beg Philippa to use a spell and heal his leg up. So I think that I don't know if he's able to walk on it yet, or if it's just a lot more healed, but whatever. He did get Philippa to do that, and that was not a good thing for him. He said that he lost face with her because he had to whine to her and beg her for a spell. So kind of funny. But he is currently the de facto governor of Redania, because Vizimir's widow is too distraught by her husband's death, and Vizimir's son, Radovid, is his name, is way too young to rule. So Dijkstra has stepped up, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I know that he's not a character that we love, of course, so I just want to make sure that I say that when I say anything nice about him. But he's smart. He's definitely competent. He knows the ins and outs of governing and politics. So I think if you are a citizen of the country of Redania, you're not in bad hands with Dijkstra. But I don't love him or anything. I'm not talking him up. I'm just saying it is true that he's smart. I don't think anybody could deny that. But during Dijkstra's conversation in this chapter with this Nilfgaardian envoy, Shillard Fitz Osterlin. By the way, I'm saying the name of this character, who seems to be a very minor character, but he might come up again, and this isn't spoilers or anything. I am just noticing that a lot of the very, very minor characters are, even in a small capacity, they get mentioned again. Not every time or not every character, but some of them will come up a second, maybe a third or fourth time. Somebody that you would never think you'd hear about again because they just seem so insignificant. They do come up again, so I want to make a point to start saying the names of these minor characters just in case they come up again, and I can say, oh yeah, we talked about that in chapter whatever. So anyway, Shillard Fitz Osterlin. So Dijkstra has a meeting with this guy. He's a Nilfgaardian envoy, and during this conversation, Dijkstra expresses his belief that Nilfgaard is secretly granting asylum to Vilgefortz and Yennefer. So he's definitely wrong about Vilgefortz. We see that firsthand from, I forget whose perspective it was, but we see Emperor Emhyr talking about how he doesn't know where Vilgefortz is, but he wants him found and he wants him killed. So we know for sure that Dijkstra's wrong. Vilgefortz is not receiving asylum in Nilfgaard at the moment. He could be wrong about Yen, but we really don't have a clue where she is. So I doubt she's in Nilfgaard. I guess it's possible, but I'd be very surprised. I know that would be quite the twist if Yennefer ended up in Nilfgaard and she was secretly allied with Emperor Emhyr. If anything like that was going on, that would be quite the twist, but I just don't see it. Like, I can't imagine that would be the case. It is possible, though, although we don't know where she is. So I don't have any theories as to where Yennefer would be, but I would not think that it's Nilfgaard. But Dijkstra, he is correct, though, when he does imply that Francesca is now the queen of the Free Elves by the grace of Emhyr. So he is right in that. Shillard denies it, but it's the truth. That wouldn't have happened with Francesca if it wasn't for Emhyr. So he's not completely wrong about everything. But in this chapter, Dijkstra becomes aware of Geralt's location because a spy found out from Milva's intel. And he's also convinced that Geralt knows of Yennefer's location. And Geralt definitely does not know where Yennefer is. And we know this because, well, I mean, I think that we would have picked up on that a while ago, but even if it was something like behind the scenes, Geralt asks Milva if she's heard updates on any of the mages from Thanedd because he wanted to know about Yen. So he does not know where she is. So it's interesting. I know I was just talking about how smart Dijkstra is, but he's actually wrong about kind of a lot of things here. He's so smart, and he makes a lot of decisions without proof, and it usually works out well for him. But he's just off track with a decent amount of pretty important things here. And I don't know if maybe that's a common thing when you are in a position that he's in and you have to basically just guess things a lot. Like you have to try and figure things out without proof. But I just thought that, I know, it stood out to me that he wasn't on the right track with as many things that he was off about here. But either way, Shillard tells Dijkstra that a precedent can be established to hand over criminals of Redania that are in Nilfgaard if Redania or if Dijkstra were to hand over Cahir. So Cahir is the Nilfgaardian knight that was in Ciri's nightmares for a long time, and then he was on Thanedd and he tried to capture Ciri, and then she didn't let him do that, and then Geralt was about to come up and kill him, but he spared him. So Dijkstra denies knowing Cahir's whereabouts, which is not a lie. He is being honest about that. He also denies even knowing who Cahir is. He's just like, it doesn't ring any bells. That's not true, though. He is aware of who Cahir is. I don't think he knew what his name was, though, because he writes a letter to Philippa, again, because he writes a couple letters to Philippa in this chapter. And in the letter, he's explaining that Redania was already searching for Cahir, and that it's interesting that Nilfgaard is only hunting those who failed to carry out orders. And since Cahir's orders were to capture and deliver Ciri, something is up. So he's got a theory. He doesn't say what the theory is, but I have a theory on what his theory is. And here's what it is. I think he's suspicious that Nilfgaard doesn't have the real Ciri, which is the truth. Obviously, nobody really knows that except for Emhyr and the fake Ciri and two of his higher up guys, Taniel and the other guy, Vatier. So yeah, I think that Dijkstra is suspicious. He obviously isn't going to just know that. And I don't know what action he would take if he does come to that conclusion. He's definitely going to do some investigating and try to find out. But if he does come to that conclusion, I'm very curious to see what action he would take against that. I think he would probably, at the very least, just try to spread that information, get it out there, because even though they can't really prove it, I think that just everybody hearing the rumor that they have an imposter Ciri in Nilfgaard would discredit Ymir in a lot of ways, or amongst a lot of people. And then people might also start looking for the real Ciri again. That is one benefit to them having the fake Ciri in Nilfgaard, is that people aren't looking for her anymore, aren't looking for the real Ciri. And then you kind of felt bad for this fake Ciri at first, but it seems like she's being treated okay. I mean, we haven't gotten any updates since chapter 5 of Time of Contempt, but they're treating her like she is royalty. So, I mean, I'm sure that girl that they took was living the life of a peasant, and her life is probably better now. I don't know that for sure, but I would imagine so. So, I mean, it's kind of a good thing at the moment, all those series with the rats, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but still, things could be a lot worse in that regard. But anyway, moving on. I want to talk about the convent / lodge of sorceresses. That's how I have it written in my notes here, convent / lodge. And I'm sorry if this is a spoiler. I don't think it's really that big of a deal, though. But I'm just going to tell you, it receives the official name of the Lodge of Sorceresses, and I'm just going to refer to it that way. And I didn't want to have to tiptoe around that the whole time. I just wanted to be consistent and call it the same thing. So it's sorry if that's a spoiler and you didn't want to learn that already, but I don't think that's that big of a deal to hear that this gets this official name later. It is at one point called a lodge in this chapter, maybe once or twice, but it's not officially called that just yet. It will happen, I think, the next time that it's brought up. But for now, it's not an official thing, but I'm just going to call it that. So I'll do that as I'm talking about it now. So the lodge currently consists of 8 sorceresses. So the first 2 that I have listed here are 2 sorceresses that we have never met until this chapter. So I'll explain a little bit about them, but we don't get to learn too much. So one of them is Asire Varanahead of Nilfgaard. So by that title I've just given her, you can clearly tell she is a Nilfgaardian sorceress. And the only thing that we really know is that the other women comment on her unattractive features. So she doesn't wear makeup and doesn't use the things that the sorceresses typically use to make themselves look younger and more beautiful. And she's apparently not very stylish. So that's all we really know about her so far. And then there is Shayla de Tankerville of Kovir. And what we know about her is that the rest of them are pretty intimidated by her. They seem to respect what she says. If she were to tell them what to do, they're definitely going to listen. She seems to have some authority. I think it's basically just because of the presence that she has. I think that she's just very confident and has a very commanding presence. But that's most of what we know about her, except for that she doesn't get involved in politics or official mage groups. She actually was part of the council at one point, but she resigned. So that's it for Shayla. And then the rest consist of Philippa, of course. She's the one who organized it. Triss Marigold, Margarita, who is the rectoress from Aretuza, Kira Metz, Sabrina Glevisig, and Francesca Findabair. So Philippa wants the lodge to consist of 12 members, and it's only at 8. I just listed 8 sorceresses there. So what is going to happen is Philippa allows Francesca to choose, well, she tells her she can choose a candidate so that she's not the only pureblood elf present in the lodge. And then Francesca asks if she could bring along 2, and Philippa allows that. And then she tells Asire that she can bring another candidate, but that has to be from Nilfgaard, so that they can have another Nilfgaardian sorceress in this group. So the 12th candidate is going to be a surprise. Philippa has somebody in mind, but she doesn't say who it is. But she does say that it's someone that's going to astonish the rest of them because she's not an ordinary person. I don't have a lot to go off of with the theory I have on who it is, but I'm going to explain why I think it's this person. I could be wrong. So I've got 2 theories. One is that it's somebody we've never met. It's going to be a brand new character. Or it's going to be Ciri. So in Dijkstra's letter to Philippa, he says, the Witcher's sending emissaries to search for traces of Princess Cirilla, the young girl you're so interested in. So that's, Ciri is an interesting person, but I mean, it kind of lines up it's very close together. So I think that that's part of it. Also, Philippa has seen Ciri perform her mediumistic abilities, and she also must be aware that Ciri's a source. So that would kind of fall into it. And then also, it would be really unexpected. Nobody's going to be thinking, aside from me, I mean, nobody in the existing group of sorceresses here is going to think that they're going to have Ciri, this young girl that knows very little about magic, that was taught very little by Yennefer. Nobody's going to think that that's who Philippa is going to want to bring along. Philippa obviously isn't aware that Ciri relinquished her magic, but I don't know if that really matters because Ciri might still have access to her original abilities, the ones that she inherited, that she was born with. So I don't know if that's even why Philippa wants her. I mean, that has to be, because why would she want just some young, like, she could just go pick a student out of Aretusa if that's what the case was. But yeah, I don't actually know if Ciri still has access to that stuff or not. Because when she relinquished her powers, she definitely lost all of the magic that she acquired when she was practicing with Yennefer. But it isn't said or explained yet whether or not she still has those other things. But either way, I could be off. It could just be a brand new character. I don't think it's going to be anybody that we've met. Because the one person I thought for a second was Yennefer, but I don't think that Yennefer would astonish anybody. I think that would actually make a lot of sense because she's a very talented and prominent sorceress. So that candidate wouldn't astonish anybody. And even if they do believe that she was secretly in cahoots with Nilfgaard, I don't think that they're going to be surprised because of that, because Francesca is part of the group. So yeah, that's what I think as of right now. But we're going to have to wait and see. So the point of this lodge is to prioritize the future of magic. It's supposed to remain apolitical, which by the end of the meeting they seem to all be on board with. But at first, some of them were not happy with the presence of other members because of the whole thing with Nilfgaard. Like Sabrina was very angry at seeing Francesca because of what happened on Thanedd. But I think by the end of this meeting, it's not really that big of a problem anymore. They seem to all just be okay with it not being political, and everybody's allowed to practice politics outside of this lodge. But if they do want to join, which nobody has officially decided if they're going to yet, but if they do want to, then they have to leave politics out of it. So now that the chapter and council are gone, there's no institution in existence anymore that looks out for the best interests of magic and its future. So the chapter and council were just very involved in politics. A lot of the members' egos and self-interest got in the way. And that's pretty much why they being the chapter and the council, were able to end so abruptly. So they want to make sure that all of that stuff that led to the downfall of those two institutions is completely left out of it. So they're going to discuss in more detail objectives for the lodge during their next meeting, which is supposed to be in person. And I don't think I've mentioned this even in the summary, but half of the members of this meeting were present through teleprojection, like a magical teleprojection. So they weren't actually there. They just looked like they were there. Which is pretty cool because we have not been present in a situation where they were using that teleprojection. So yeah, I just thought that sounded pretty cool. Alrighty, I have one other little thought before I move into my closing thoughts, and I just didn't really have a good place to fit this into, so that's why it's just kind of random on its own here. But I just wanted to make sure that I talked about the fact that it has been rumored the person who assassinated King Vizimir of Redania was either an elf or a half-elf. And now with that, the humans are seeking revenge, which means that they are targeting and slaughtering elves more than they ever have been. I guess probably mainly in Redania, maybe a little bit in Temeria too, because they're allied, but still. The tension between elves and humans, or humans and non-humans, was already bad. I mean, it's been bad since the first time it was brought up back in sometime in the Last Wish book. But it's just, it just keeps getting worse. There's never a time where they talk about it getting better. All right, with that, I'll move into my closing thoughts here. I've got just a few things I want to talk about, kind of where we're left off at the end of this chapter. So Ciri is among the rats still. We just get a very brief update there. It's not even through her perspective. It's through the perspective of a stranger. But it seems like she's pretty acclimated. She was holding hands with Missile. Missile was the one that forced herself on Ciri in the last chapter. So it looks like they're actually in a consensual relationship now, which is odd. Wouldn't expect that. But I mean, Ciri's got nobody at all except for them. So I mean, it's not really too surprising that she would latch on to, especially people that are around the same age as her, to these people that are offering to be close to her. It's just, they're criminals and they like to kill people, so it's pretty dangerous. And Ciri probably shouldn't become that type of person herself, but just in life in general with everybody, like, you're influenced by the people you spend the most time around. So it's looking like Ciri's probably going to end up becoming just like them. I think we kind of got that understanding at the end of the last chapter when the one soldier was talking to the prefect and Taniel about how he had this really bad wound on him that was actually given to him by Ciri because he and his little unit were attacked by the rats, and Ciri actually got that guy. So yeah, I don't know, she could be a nicer version of them, but it's not looking good. So something else that looks like it looks pretty bad. Emir is already making efforts to commit aggression against Temeria. Temeria and Nilfgaard signed a neutrality pact. I said I did not think he was going to stick with it, and he is not doing that. So we know this because there are Scoia'tael, who we know are incited by Nilfgaard, attacking in Temeria, and according to Dijkstra, armed gangs have been raiding in Sodden and Brugge, and Sodden and Brugge are under Temerian protection. So if you attack Sodden and Brugge, then you are attacking Temeria. Dijkstra also says, war may break out in a day or two. The border on the Yaruga will soon go up in flames. Also, when Milva is talking to the Scoia'tael, she discovers they're going to join the fighting that has already started because Nilfgaard has now crossed the Yaruga into Sodden and striking Brugge. So I mean, they don't confirm nor deny that this has happened, but I bet it has. No reason to believe it hasn't. And yeah, so after Milva learns this is when she decides to try and catch Geralt and tell him to turn back. That's where the chapter's left off. Not good. The war is expanding. More people are going to die, suffer, get hurt, get sick. It's terrible. All right, on that cheery note, that's all I have for you. So just to let you know, in case you didn't, these episodes are available on YouTube with video, Spotify and Apple Podcasts with just the audio. Thank you so much for joining in. I will catch you all in the next episode.